Good evening, everyone, and a big warm welcome to you all. Thank you very much for attending our second debating workshop. Now, before I begin, I would just like to let everyone know that this is being recorded. Now, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Connie, and I am the Middle Temple Students Association Debate Officer. This is the second of 3 workshops and the third one will be taking place in March this year. For those of you who didn't manage to attend the previous workshop, I would like to inform you of the Middle Temple Monroe Cup debating competition, which is taking place this June. And we do encourage students to come forward and participate. The team that wins, with the lucky 2 winners, will each receive a £200 gift card from the legal tailor Shepherd and Woodward. So that's a great prize and could perhaps contribute to a wig or a gown, etc. So I hope that's an incentive to participate. The competition will also be judged by barristers and masters within the debating and public speaking field. So you will no doubt receive excellent feedback on your performances, whether you win or not. And also, competing will be an excellent addition to your CV, and it's something that certainly won't go unmissed on pupillage applications. Now, in our previous workshop, we discussed what parliamentary style debating was, the rules, and how to structure your arguments. And today's workshop will be split into 2 parts. In the first part, I will be discussing how to think on your feet in the form of points of information and rebuttals. And the last hour and a half will be the very fun debating part of the session. So without further ado, let's proceed to the first part of today's workshop. So, thinking on your feet. Now, the ability to think quickly and deal with unforeseen arguments is what distinguishes debating from public speaking. And there are 2 main areas where you need to think on your feet. Firstly, points of information, and secondly, rebuttals. So let's deal with them in turn, and points of information first. So what is a point of information? Essentially, it's when a speaker from the opposing team interjects the current speaker briefly by offering them a point of information in the form of a question or a statement. Debaters should both make and accept points of information. It really does prove that you're on top of your argument and that you're confident within them. Now, to give a point of information during another speech, a debater will simply stand up. Now, I'm aware we're virtual at the moment, so we won't be doing that, but in a real debate, you would stand up and you would simply say, point of information. And the current speaker then has the choice whether to accept or reject it. If they choose to accept, the speaker who interjected makes the point of information for about 15 seconds or so, and the current speaker may offer in response an argument, a rebuttal, or a question to that speaker. However, if the current speaker does not accept the point of information, the opposing debater who offered it must sit back down. The first and the last minute of your speech is considered protected time, during which no points of information can be offered. And if you do offer a point of information during protected time, you will be marked down for it. Now, offering points, even if they're not accepted, shows that you are interested and active in the debate. Accepting them shows that you're confident of your arguments. A team that does neither is not debating, they're simply public speaking. Now, a few points to note here, tips perhaps that will help with points of information. Do not take points during mid-sentence, it will disrupt the flow of your speech. Finish your sentence and then accept, but do reply to them as soon as possible, as interruptions cannot be ignored during a debate. Secondly, try not to take 2 points of information in quick succession, and the opposing speaker will probably, well, unless they're trying to annoy you or throw you off, won't ask 2 points in quick succession. They will leave some time in between. Thirdly, don't take too many. Take around 2 in a 5-minute speech, or as we're doing mini debates today, your speeches will be 3 minutes, so take 1 if it's offered. So that is points of information. Now we move on to rebuttals. So, in essence, a rebuttal is about telling the other team that they're wrong and that you're right. The problem often is that speakers will settle for a rebuttal that is non-comparative. That means they'll explain why something is bad or wrong, but without explaining why the reverse might be true, or why the world would be better on their side. The point of a rebuttal is to take down the opposition's argument while bolstering your own position. So let's have a metaphor. Imagine that your opposition's argument is a tree, and imagine your rebuttal as an axe directed at that tree. Your rebuttal should intend to chop down the tree at its trunk, taking out the core idea behind the argument, not just the branches and the leaves, but the trunk of the tree. Now, you're unlikely to be able to take down every argument in every instance, and that's normal, to be fair. It just means that in the most realistic scenario, you've left your opposition with some portion of their argument still standing. If that's all you do, then the judges will need to weigh up against your own positive contributions and decide whose material is more persuasive. A better idea, however, is to make sure that you turn the argument around completely. This means that in your rebuttal, when you explain, say, that your opposition's policy is unlikely to prevent deaths, you should then go on and add an extra line of analysis and show why it is in fact that it may cause more deaths, and then give reasons as to why that might be. That is an effective rebuttal. So, how do you structure a rebuttal? Now, the conventional way I'll tell you first. Essentially, you structure your rebuttal into your speech, and you put it often at the beginning of your speech, after your headlines. You might start your speech, for example, by outlining the points you're going to make and then moving straight on to your rebuttal points. You might structure this by saying, the proposition said X, and our response is X. Obviously, you would do that in the structure of point, evidence, and analysis, the best way to structure an argument. Alternatively, you can interweave your rebuttal throughout your speech. And this is where you make your own substantive points that clash directly with those of your opponents, and identify and flag up those clashes as you go along. And this, for me, is the technique that I've always preferred in my own speeches. So, for example, just as assistance for you when you're debating in real life, in a competition, what I used to do before a debate would be I would note down the most likely points that my opposition would raise or come up with or argue in general. And then next to those points, I would write a very quick, short, one-line rebuttal. In the debate, I would place this sheet in front of me, and should the rebuttal be needed, I would simply lift it on the paper into my speech and then expand upon it a little. Equally, this works for points of information too. So let me give you an example. Let's imagine a scenario where my opposition have just argued that zoos should be banned because it's unjust that animals are exploited for human entertainment. What I would do, already previously having done so, jot down that potential argument on a piece of paper, and also a one-line rebuttal which opposes it, such as, tourists help endangered animals continue to exist by funding zoos. That would be my essential rebuttal, and then I would expand upon it in my speech. You have to remember that having the ability to think on your feet is crucial in every single debate, and it's a tool which must be in every speaker's sandbox. Remember, the judge decides the winning team based on who has presented the most compelling argument. So making your own points and addressing rebuttals effectively is a surefire way to win or score maximum points at the very least. So that was a rather short lecture on thinking on your feet. So now we can move on to the debating part of this session. And what we're going to do first is start with our quick fire round. And this essentially involves myself firing a motion at one of you and telling you to argue either for or against it. So for example, I will say, this house believes in aliens. Victoria, argue for. Don't argue, Victoria, I'm just using you as an example. And then I would start the 30-second timer and we'll tell you when your time's up. So can I just let everyone know that those of you who don't want to participate in this exercise, please turn your camera off so I know who not to ask. And just a pointer again, this is a very fun and relaxed environment, so don't feel pressured to participate in any way, but it would be great to get involved because it tests your quick thinking skills, obviously the topic of today's workshop, and it's a lot of fun. So I'll just get my trusty phone timer on. Again, anyone who doesn't want to participate, please turn your cameras off, and also remember to turn your mic on when I call out your name. Okay, so the first motion is, this house believes in God. Molly Breslaw, argue for. Go.
God exists as such beauty as nature cannot exist without an alternative being. How would you describe how humans got on the earth if there wasn't a God present? God also must exist because how would you explain all the stories that are present in the Bible? They are not just made up, they're clearly things that people have witnessed in their lives. You can't explain the complex of DNA if there wasn't an alternative being. It doesn't just happen by instance. It just
Thank you, Molly. Your time is up. I will just interject, by the way, so that I can give many of you a chance to speak. So the next motion, this house would ban smartphones. Ben Romans, argue against. Go.
I would argue against this because it's a vital part of our society, especially in the current situation with the COVID pandemic now. We need technology more than ever because we can't meet up as we normally would do. technology allows us to access things such as Zoom, which helps us for work, education, socialising with our friends. Is also vital for dealing with bank financial details of people now. More people than ever are using their phones to access
your time up is Ben. Thank you. And the next motion, this House believes that watching television is harmful to our health. Let's go with Neil Williams. Go. Oh, and I should say that you're arguing for. Go.
This House believes that watching television is harmful for your health for a number of reasons. Firstly, especially when it's in excessive use, it reduces the amount of exercise that people doing. Certain introductions of such like the Netflix box sets and things like that can be very addictive. People can find that they spend a lot of the time doing that as opposed to necessarily taking up more social activities with friends, family, and encouraging them to do more exercise.
Thank you, Neil. Your time is up. Okay, this House believes that ghosts are real. Iofi Kennedy, argue against. Go.
This House believes that ghosts aren't real. There have been various reports of ghost sightings throughout the years. However, none of these have been backed up by any significant real evidence. There are a number of factors which could create the impression that people have seen ghosts, including mental health, including deliriousness.
Thank you, Iofi. Your time is up. Okay, so let's have this House believes that success is based on money. And we will have Yassine Ahmed argue for. Go.
Success is based on money. Money brings you a whole range of different opportunities. Money can enable you to purchase and buy the best technology, the best textbooks, the best tutoring. It can give you the ability to access additional support when you're in education in particular. As you move forward, I think money brings along a number of different privileges, such as opening the doors for you in terms of, as I say, different markets.
Thank you, Yassine. Your time is up. Okay, this House believes that chocolate is the best flavoured cake. Let's have Jordan Wilford argue against. Go.
Chocolate cake is obviously not, this House believes that chocolate cake is not the best flavour of cakes around. The reason for this is there are a number of people throughout the world who prefer different flavours, such as lemon poppy seed, vanilla, Victoria sponge, and in vast cases, the majority of these aren't actually in favour of chocolate cake. And for that simple reason, we argue that chocolate cake is not the best flavour of cake.
Thank you very much. Okay, this House would ban cars in cities. Charan Bogle, argue for. Go.
So this House is in favour of banning cars in cities for the simple reason of reducing pollution. Cities are known for being small, compact areas with a high density of population, and the more cars there are, the more pollution is going to affect people living and working in the cities. And for that reason alone, cars should be banned in the city.
Thank you. Okay, let's have this House supports animal testing. Wasim Khan, argue for. Go.
This House believes that animal testing is in the benefit of the public, notably the COVID-19 pandemic. Tests, I believe, have been conducted on animals to produce a vaccine in record time. There's a number of different benefits. Again, it prevents humans from being tested. Animals are a good resource in terms of producing vaccines and other medicines and other ailments that could be a benefit to the public at large. In addition, there is also a benefit to...
Thank you, Wasim. Your time is up. Okay, next motion, we will have this House would ban Instagram. Olivia Rawlings, please argue for. Go. Oh, Olivia, you're on mute. I'll start the timer again when you speak.
Sorry. This House believes that we should ban Instagram. There are various reasons why we believe this. Firstly, because there are many posts, many more posts than can be readily controlled, and many posts that go against the community guidelines and cause harm to people, and even go so far as inciting terrorism or dangerous events. Another reason is that too many people are addicted to...
Thank you, Olivia. Next motion, this House would make all vaccinations compulsory. Victoria White, argue against. Go.
This House believes that all vaccinations should be made compulsory. The primary reason for this is that if vaccinations were not made compulsory, not everyone would have them, and particularly in a COVID environment, huge numbers of people would eventually die from that vaccination. There is an argument that that it's an affront on people's liberty, but actually liberty is a decision that we all make when we choose to live in a democracy. And when we choose to live in a democracy, we've also chosen to live safely. And so all vaccinations, when we've chosen to live in a democracy, should therefore be compulsory. And that's why we've chosen to support this.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Right, this House would ban Photoshop. Let's have Musa Nella. Please argue for. Go.
Yes, this House believes that Photoshop should be banned because it presents a different reality from what it really is. It tells us that this person is not real, but with some effects it makes people that are affected by marketing believe that that is actually happening, or that person that is how it really look, where if Photoshop is banned, we would see the real version of how a person is. Or
thank you, Musa. Thank you very much. Okay, this House would abolish dating apps. Harry Farmer, please argue against. Go.
This House would argue against the banning of dating apps, especially in a COVID situation like this. It's one of the only ways people can truly meet is outside meeting in gyms and restaurants and pubs and whatnot are closed. It makes it almost impossible to have an interaction with someone new unless the use of social media or dating apps themselves are used for this purpose. It's also backed up by arguments of some people may feel more comfortable only meeting online, and that can only be, and two people might only feel comfortable meeting online or discussing to start with.
Your time is up. Everyone's loving the old COVID chestnut, but that's good. Current affairs, people. Okay, so next motion. This House believes in life after death. Let's have Jean-Charles Abid. Hope I said that right.
Yes, you did. Well done.
Argue for. Go.
Life after death. So where do we start? Or as we heard before, so it appears that there is a very good case that there is God out there, and that almost all religions are based on the basis that there is life after death as some sort of reward process, leveling out injustice. And it seems a little bit illogical that life just sort of stops at the point.
Thank you, Jean-Charles.
Thank you.
Now, next one, let's have this House would ban driverless cars. And we will have Pragaran. I don't think I pronounced that right.
Could you Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. You can call me Garen. Could you please say the question again?
Yes,
I just
okay.
missed it out. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, no worries. This house would ban driverless cars. Please argue for. Go.
Okay. So I'm arguing for this house believes that the banning of driverless cars. So driverless cars is something that brings a lot of things that would arise from it, like technical difficulties, because cars that present a driver in it has a lot of things. For example, the connectivity with the car.
Garen. Apologies,
And
time
yeah,
is up.
it's fine. It's fine. Okay.
Okay, and the last one, let's have, this house believes that CCTV is too invasive, and we will have Mukhtar Ali Malik. Please, may you argue against. Go. Oh, okay. Mukhtar, you're on mute. Mukhtar? Okay, Mukhtar, okay, perhaps you can start again because I think we missed your whole speech. So, this house believes that CCTV is too invasive. Please argue against. Go.
Yes, CCTV, it is too invasive, this house believes, because not everybody knows that they are being recorded, and it's quite uncertain. One, people don't like to be photographed or seen into every movement they make, and this is why it is too invasive on the privacy of individuals who enter or leave that building or area.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so I think I got around to everyone. So now we will move on to the debating portion of the evening. But before we do get into the debates, I would like to give a quick once-over of the rules. So I'm just going to share my screen with you, and hopefully that's come up. Can someone give me a nod if that's come up? Okay, brilliant. Right, so as you can see here on the screen, we are participating in mini parliamentary style debating. So firstly, you'll be given a motion, which is the topic to be debated. This house supports voluntary euthanasia as an example, or this house would ban private schools, or as on the screen, this house would ban zoos. And I will assign 2 teams, and you will be given 10 minutes to prepare. The 2 sides are proposition, which are known as the government, and opposition, which are known as the closing government. Each team, as you can see, will have 2 speakers. The team that wins is the one that presents the most compelling argument for their side. The internet is absolutely prohibited, so unless you know facts off the top of your head, then I don't believe you'll probably be throwing any out during the debates. As this is a mini parliamentary style debate, well, the speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. The first and last 30 seconds will be protected time, which essentially means that no points of information can be offered during this time. So for the first 30 seconds, it's off limits. For the last 30 seconds of the 3-minute speech, it's off limits. So anywhere in between, a point of information can be offered. I will signal when you are out or in protected time. So for example, as your speech is 3 minutes, if you've gotten to 30 seconds in, I will just do this. That means you're out of protected time. And then in the last 30 seconds of your speech, I will do this again. That means you're back into protected time. Now, I must remind you quickly, if you are offered a point of information, speaker can choose to accept or reject it, and whoever is offering that point, please keep it very short, 15 seconds max. And when you have finished your speech, even if it's before your time is up, simply say thank you and we will proceed to the next speaker. Now, after all of the speakers have given their speech, the floor will be opened for questions where those who aren't participating will be able to ask questions of the speakers, and if there's time, we can engage in a short further rebuttal between the debaters. After the floor question, I, as chair, will decide the winning team and I will explain why. Now remember, the way you win is by presenting the most compelling argument. I will also be timing your speeches. So I will just move on to
Connie, could I ask a question quickly? Sorry.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It's just a question of procedure. In the first session that we had,
yes,
when people raised points of information, we sought permission from the chair. In the real debate, would that be something that you'd have to seek from the chair?
No. You simply said point of information. Okay.
Thank you.
So now I'm hoping you can all see this screen, which is our first motion. This House calls for further population control. So I should probably say now, if you do not want to take part, again, please switch off your cameras and I will randomly assign students or members into teams. So at the moment, quite a few of you have your cameras on, so I'm going to pick people at random. Okay, so for the opening government, so the first speaker for the proposition, we will have Ben Romans. Oh. And please do take note of these points here. They just assist a little with your speech. The first speaker for the opposition, we will have Molly Breslaw. And let's see. For the third speaker, so second speaker for the proposition, we will have, apologies everyone, I'm just trying to find out a way of how to get your names up. Sorry about this. We will have Jordan Wilford. And then, let me see. For the fourth speaker, we will have, apologies everyone, I'm just, Victoria.
Yeah.
Victoria, I just need your assistance. I can't seem to find people's names. So I'm just going to say someone's name, and if you've got your camera on, please just say yes, so I know, because I'm actually having trouble finding your names. Harry Farmer, your camera's on, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, excellent. So Harry Farmer, you will be our fourth and last speaker for the opposition. Okay, so I'll leave this screen on very briefly for about a minute for those speakers who have been chosen for the debate, just so you can jot down these points. And as you observe that, I will just put you into breakout rooms. So what I'm going to do now is stop sharing my screen, and I will put you into breakout rooms now. Okay, so I'm putting you into your breakout rooms now, and you will have 10 minutes. Okay, see you soon. Excellent. So whilst we wait for those in the breakout rooms to prepare for their debate, we will continue with our quickfire round, but instead this time of assigning each speaker a single 30 seconds to speak, what we'll do is we'll have like a quick for and against between speakers. So I will say the motion as I did last time. Each speaker will have 1 minute to speak, and I will say who should argue for and who should argue against. Okay, so next we will have this house supports, and I love this one, parents spying on their teenagers. Now, let's have Nicola Rabini. Please argue for. Go.
This house supports parents spying on their teenagers because teenagers often believe that they are invincible, they know it all, and find themselves in positions where they are vulnerable and certainly in dangerous positions. So spying is in their best interest for their safety, and essentially in that respect it's also good for society to ensure that the children, because they are still children, are staying on the straight and narrow, staying educated, staying at school, and will therefore encourage a more productive and healthy workforce and society at large. So it has larger implications than just ensuring that the children are safe. It has a larger consequence further down the line as a long term. So for those reasons, this house believes that spying on teenagers is imperative.
Thank you. And Mukhtar Ali Malik, please argue against Nicola's points. Oh, your camera's off. Okay, let's have Charan Bogle. Please argue against Nicola's points. Go.
This house is against parents spying on their children for two main reasons. The first reason being that there is no limit to what parents can spy on. There's no stopping them from impeding on the personal autonomy of their child, which it brings me to my second point, which is that spying on your child could impede their psychological development, feeling confident enough in themselves that they can look after themselves without parents constantly watching everything they write or everything they send.
Okay, thank you, Charan. So next motion, let's have this house believes that mind reading is the best superpower. Can we please have Claudia Joliffe? Please argue against. Go. You are on mute. There you go, you're off mute now.
I argue against being able to mind read, and mind reading being the best superpower, because I feel like you don't always know what somebody's thinking, and even if you had that ability, it's probably not the best power to have. I think there might be certain circumstances or situations where it's better to not know what a person's thinking. I also feel like that would probably be an invasion of somebody else's privacy to know constantly what they're thinking or how they approach certain situations or circumstances. It would also probably influence your perspective a lot more than not having that superpower whatsoever.
Thank you very much. That was good. And Yasin Ahmed, I see you laughing there, so let's have you speak against. Go.
I think this house believes that against the superpower, the best superpower being mind reading. First of all, mind reading itself, it could lead to a whole range of other possibilities. I would hate to know what my wife is thinking about me all the time, I promise you. And I think that it would lead into a number of difficult circumstances for all of us. In terms of a superpower, you know, the superpower to fly, there are a whole range of other superpowers that are much more safer, as I would say, in terms of being superpowers. So I would say flying, or sort of being able to read quickly, or to have a photographic memory, is a much greater and safer superpower than mind reading. I would, as I say in my opening statement, I would hate to know what some of my children or my wife is particularly thinking about me. So I think it's a safer place for us not to be able to read each other's minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasin. Okay, and for the last motion, let's have this house supports cosmetic surgery. Please can we have Musanella, apologies, Musanella, please argue for cosmetic surgery. Go.
This house believes that cosmetic surgery is gives a benefit to the community, because it boosts people's confidence, it raises their esteem, and it makes them look the way that they want to. And many people may not feel confident that how they look they are presented to community, or they will feel that they are not worth, whereas because of the cosmetic surgery they will feel confident to present themselves to the society, and they don't see it as something that is not allowed to do, but something that makes them feel comfortable. And that's why this house support this motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's have, who shall I pick on last? Let's have Victoria White argue against that motion, which is that this house supports cosmetic surgery. Please argue in opposition. Go.
This house definitely does not support cosmetic surgery. It's been suggested that cosmetic surgery is a benefit to the community. This is nonsense. It's a benefit to the specific individual who gets the cosmetic surgery. The only community it benefits is the community of plastic surgeons. There's an industry out there which is inspiring women with a lack of confidence, not a huge growth in their individual confidence. This is a grotesque trend that we see. It's not something which improves the overall beauty of the human race or the overall beauty of a specific individual. It encourages us to, it's a grotesque idea, and therefore I rest my case.
Thank you very much. Okay, so actually we're just in time, so I will take our debaters out of their breakout rooms. Okay, brilliant. So everyone is back. For our first debate, the motion is this house would impose further population control. Now, unlimited population control cannot be a good thing. 200 years ago, Thomas Malthus pointed out that human capacity for reproduction could certainly disastrously take over all of our resources belonging to mankind. The debate now is whether we are heading for that disaster, and if we are, then what measures should we take to avoid it? Should they be soft, for example, such as the education of women or economic growth? Or should they be hard, for example, promoting free contraceptives, or making abortion mandatory in some cases, or imposing financial penalties on larger families? So with that in mind, I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is Ben Romans. As you begin to speak, I will hit the timer button.
Okay.
Go on, Ben.
Thank you all for listening. And this house moves to that we should further our population control, and this is essential for the survival of humanity. and it is also a concern amongst the people of this country as well. Recent polls and surveys show that the vast majority of the people in this country are determined to include population controlling measures such as immigration, because you cannot talk about population control without talking about immigration. So I'll move on to my first point. My first point is that, like said at the start of this discussion, that population control is necessary because our resources are running low. In the UK, for example, we've got a growing demand for housing, and we've got, by allowing people to reproduce at the rate they are and allowing more people to come into this country, it establishes that more and more people are homeless, and that is a growing concern, especially now when we're in the middle of a pandemic where more and more people are sleeping on the streets. And further on from that, the pandemic has proven that if we have more people concentrated in one area, it allows for the spread of infectious diseases like COVID-19, which has all suspended our lives and meant that we are meeting virtually rather than physically. As well as this, there is also the concern about our climate as well, because we have seen the evidence. Global warming is real. Our emissions are rising and rising and rising, and we are in a climate emergency. And this is why we should introduce measures such as population control in order to help the environment, because without the way we are carrying on, the ozone layer is weakening. We've got global warming, which means that the ice caps are melting, flooding is happening. The UK is sinking by, I think, is 1/16 of an inch each year, and this is alarming. Something needs to be done, and this is why I think we need to have a discussion about this population controlling issue, because it affects the future of humanity. And when discussing the future of humanity, let's discuss schools. At the moment, schooling, there is not enough.
Ben, your time is up. Thank you very much. Okay, so the first speaker for the opposition or opposition government is Molly Breslaw. You may begin.
Good evening, Madam Speaker. This House is against further population control. The reason for this is we believe that this will restrict people's freedoms. In this country, we are a democratic country, and we believe that people should have freedoms to do what they want. If we want to be like China, it could cause severe issues by population control. This caused people to physically drown their own children because they wanted now heirs. And is this an issue that we want? And I pose to the opposition, what happens with people who have twins? What happens with people who have triplets? Are we going to restrict them? And lots of people in this country don't even want children. They've never had an ambition to have children. They don't want children. So this controls the population control as well. With your point about more areas are being infected because of COVID, this is not a population issue. This is the lack of compliance. People are not complying. It's not because we have too many people in this country. It's because people are failing to follow the rules. And furthermore, with your point about global warming and emissions rising, the future generation will be the ones that solve this. We have seen the younger generation are the ones that are moving forward the climate change, and the younger generation will be the ones that push forward and make an impact. It's young minds that have changed technology over time, that have changed science. The older generation will die out, and we'll have no one to replace them, and we'll need someone at working age groups.
Point of information.
Sorry, what?
Point of information. Is it right for us to shift our responsibilities onto our future posterity?
No, we shouldn't push all our problems onto the future. But if we don't have a future, if another COVID situation happens, there will be no future. Many people have already died out, and lots of people of all age groups have died, and there's no one to support the future generation. And if we restrict the population control to one child, it impacts freedoms, and people are entitled to have children if they choose to.
Point of information. What is the point of having freedoms if
Apologies, Ben. Apologies. Molly has to accept or reject
Okay,
your
sorry.
point of information. And you're now in protected time, so you don't have to accept that.
Okay. I was also going to go on to say that it will open up the floodgates to other issues. If we restrict one thing and we say that population, it has to be controlled, what happens to all the other issues? Are we going to restrict other freedoms that we're entitled to? Are we going to restrict the right to have an abortion? Are we going to restrict the rights to have medical care? Like, you have to have vaccination.
Thank you, Molly. Your time is up.
Thank you.
So now we will have the second speaker for the proposition, which is Jordan Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you to the opposition for their first points. Just in response to a few of those. Firstly, on the point of information I raise, shifting our responsibilities now onto the younger generations. To simply say that they will sort it out in the future is arguably unfair on them. We'll be placing in their hands something which we have caused. Therefore, should we not have some sort of responsibility for our actions? We argue yes. And that is partly why we want to implement measures which help control the population growth within the United Kingdom. One of the fundamental questions to this is how this is to be achieved. And the opposition has assumed that we'd be following similar measures as seen in China, where restrictions on families were to just one child, which resulted in different consequences. However, that is not what we seek to propose. Rather, the way we seek to control population growth in the UK is more of an incentive basis, whereby there can be some type of rewards given to families to incentivize them on limiting the numbers in their families to a controlled amount. For the reasons which, yes, points of information. You're on mute, sorry.
I don't see how we can reward families by having less children. How would this reward system work? What would be the reward?
So it could be done in relation to amounts that are payable through perhaps universal credits or something along the lines of that. The technicalities will have to be worked out at future dates. But what's important here is that we will have educated the masses in the UK as to the consequences of not controlling the population. And as Ben has already, as the first speaker has already pointed out, there are implications in relation to infectious diseases. As the opposition pointed out, many people have died because of the high infectious rate amongst us because we're living in such close proximity. If this continues to grow, then arguably infectious diseases can become more of a lethal problem for our country. Secondly, in relation to the climate issue, which the opposition wants us to shift onto the younger generations, as we mentioned out, this is unfair. We have a responsibility to help our children and predecessors to live in a prosperous society. And for these points, we push the motion forward.
Thank you very much, Jordan. So will the fourth and final speaker for the opposition, Harry Farmer. Please may you take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will address the opposition. I apologise. Will address the proposal final point first, somewhat backwardly. They argue that a smaller population could reduce in a less significant spread of contagious viruses, such as the one we face at the minute. However, I would draw their attention to the 17th century plague pandemic that hit Europe and addressed that that was an equally significant point that involved an equal lockdown and significant across the European continent. So a smaller population certainly doesn't guarantee less transmission of disease. I'll return to the first point made by the first speaker, where it was referenced that it's essential for the survival of humanity. As has already been highlighted, this could lead to some significant degree of gender bias for families wanting to have children of a specific gender, which as the future could hold significant issues, and that follows that one gender may become significantly more popular than the other and could ultimately lead to some degree. Yes, I'll take the point of order.
Well, I'll address your matter about gender bias because the population control isn't going to repeal the Equality Act, which tackles with discrimination amongst sexes, religions, disabilities, things like that. That's not, if we're going to implement measures like that, we're not going to repeal our legislation.
Forgive me, I might not have been clear when I said gender bias in that regard. I meant it in the regard of, much as the case of other countries with similar measures, one gender has been significantly preferred the continuation of family lines, and along that line it could lead to a gender bias in terms of the physical, for want of a better word, keepment of a child depending on the gender that they're born.
Points of information?
I'll also address the climate. Yes, I'll take it.
Is this not resting on a very large assumption when you state that it could occur?
Where my rebuttal to that would be is resting on, as my next point was to address climate control, it's addressing on a very large assumption that the reduction of population would significantly impact the climate concerns that the planet faces. As your colleague pointed out, the sea levels are indeed rising and global warming is occurring, but any degree of population control to impact these will certainly not take any effect for generations to come, and could in fact lead to the reduced birth of groups that might indeed hold the answer to these problems. Yes, I agree we shouldn't shift the problem to a further generation.
Thank you, Harry. Your time is up. Okay, thank you everyone for participating in that debate. But before I announce who I believe has won this debate, I will now open the floor up to any questions. So if you have any questions for the proposition, please may you take yourself off mute and ask away. And
I have a question for the proposition. How would you tackle imbalance of genders? So, for instance, I believe it's in Japan, they have a heavy population of one gender and less of the other. What measures would you take to ensure an equality or a balance of genders for the future generation?
May I take the question? Thank you for the question. I think it's an important one. I think there's a distinction to be drawn through looking at the cultural traditions of certain Asian countries, like you mentioned, Japan and also China. An inspection of the cultures in those countries which have caused these gender imbalances shows that there's a lot of weight attached to having perhaps, say, a male as opposed to a female in the family for certain rights and legacy issues. But I think in relation to how we tackle that issue, I would respond by saying that it wouldn't be an issue because of the measures we've already taken within the UK to address the importance of equality between the sexes, between male, female, and also in the other sexes as well, which I won't classify. So I don't believe, this House does not believe that it would be on equal levels as we see in Asian countries because of how we're addressing it already.
Thank you.
Can I comment, if that's okay, point of interest?
Ben, we'll just leave that for now. Let's just see if we have any questions. We'll deal with questions first and then we'll move to any rebuttals, okay? So, Iofi, I saw that your hand's up. Is that for the proposition?
Yes, it's a question for something that Jordan had mentioned. You mentioned that some sort of reward system should be put in place to reward people for limiting their families. And one measure you suggested was universal credit. Isn't this counterintuitive, seeing as it's families with young children who are in most need of support from the state?
Thank you for the question. I will admit it wasn't off the cuff response. Partly because that's what we're not seeking to argue on how to go about this. Yes, what we're arguing today with this motion is the principle behind the importance of limiting population, and indeed a debate on how that is to occur is important and integral to achieving this principle. But what we wanted to establish today is that this principle of seeking to control the population in some way needs to occur, and how that might be, we're not sure at this stage. I mentioned an incentivized basis that may or may not be the solution, and that's what we're arguing here today.
Okay, do we have any questions for the opposition?
I think there's a hand up from Nicola on her screen. She's using the hand up function.
Oh, right, yeah, Nicola, just take yourself off mute and ask.
Actually, sorry, I was for the proposition, not opposition, sorry.
Okay, well, are there any questions for the opposition? Okay, well, before we come to you, Nicola, Ben, you mentioned that you wanted to make a rebuttal point, so go ahead.
Yeah, my rebuttal point was to Chowran, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. My rebuttal to that would be in the UK we are a diverse country, and if we're going to introduce population control measures, there is legal protections there that are stopping discrimination and further things, and more, and this is an issue that was just off the cuff, my response to that, but this would need further looking at. But you cannot, it's not about asserting an all-white male population or an all-white female or anything like that, but having all straight people, gay people, whatever. It's about controlling it and ensuring equality across the board.
Okay, do any of the speakers want to further any rebuttals that came up during the debate? If anyone wants to make any points. And if you do, please just take yourself off mute and ask away.
I'd like to say, with regards to the reward system, would people be rewarded for the lack of being unable to have children? So they've had to go through the pain of not being able to conceive a child, and then you're rewarding them for this? Is it because this is what you're suggesting? You're saying if you control the population, you are rewarded. So you're rewarded for a traumatic incident that's happened in your life because you can't have children.
You respond, Ben, or should I?
I'm happy. What would you rather respond? I'm happy to do whatever.
Yeah, go for it. I feel like I've been blabbering on too much.
My response to that would be that obviously with dealing with issues like this, it is obviously sensitive, but it's not just about ensuring that we stop population control as well. It's about ensuring that we have growth as a human, because growth as a species and as a society, because we have too many people that are left behind. And I think that in some cases, sometimes there could be people that are infertile and cannot have children. Maybe those that have too many kids, sort of say, they could then give it up for adoption and allow for other people that can't have kids to have kids. But that was just a suggestion. The technicalities are far beyond me to think. It was just a suggestion, that's all.
Okay, so I think we are done for that debate. Everyone, well done for participating. That was a really good effort. And I have to say that I'm very impressed with how all of you took on board the earlier part of this session with regards to points of informations and rebuttal points. I thought they were really good and you all had a go, which was brilliant. Now, I'm going to decide who the winners are. I have decided rather. And based on who I believe gave the most compelling argument, I have to give it to the opposition. So Molly and Harry. Now, the reason I'm giving it to you is because, firstly, Molly, I thought your freedom and rights arguments was very good, and you did keep referring back to that even after the point of information. So that was very solid in my point of view. You also addressed the climate change rebuttal, and COVID was addressed as well. The fact that it's not due to population control. It's not because there's too much population. It's because essentially there's lack of compliance. And I mean, if you look at China, where it all started, arguably, and I think actually one of the biggest populations on the planet, they're nearly COVID free. So it would have been helpful if you could have thrown that example in there. However, I thought they were great rebuttals. Also, I think what let the proposition down, now I know that this is a very last minute debate in terms of, you don't have a lot of time to prepare, so I do understand the position that everyone's in. But Jordan, I'm afraid when you mentioned incentives and then that was picked up on, unfortunately, you just sort of threw out universal credit and linked it. And I admire your efforts, but it didn't really work out in the end.
I had your voice looming in my head from the previous debate about the zoos and how we're going to implement it. So I was like, okay.
No, it's excellent. The fact that you thought about how it would happen. However, I don't think you thought quite enough about how it would happen. At all. And that's not just your fault. It's also, you and your first speaker should have thought about this together as one of the main reasons as to how you would tackle population control. I mean, what would you do? And to be honest, I did like the idea of the incentive based system. However, the thought about which incentives was lacking. So for that reason, I found the opposition's arguments as the most compelling and therefore the winners of this debate. So well done to you. Yes, well done. So now what I'd like to do is just have a quick show of hands of who thought, firstly, who agrees that we need further population control? Okay, so we have a few of you. And who thought, put your hands up please, who thought the proposition gave the better argument? And the opposition? Okay, I think next time what I'm going to do is ask for the hands up before I give my verdict, just in case that's imposing any sort of bias. Right, so let's move on to the second debate. Now I will share my screen with you again. Okay, so for the second debate, it is: this House would reintroduce the right to bear arms in the United Kingdom. Now, for the proposition, we will have Wasim Khan, please. And the second proposition speaker, we will have Olivia Rawlings. Apologies that for some reason your name has not appeared in bold or green. Now for the opposition, we will have Yasim Ahmed.
Oh, Connie, can I? I'm gonna have. I've sent you a message in the chat. I'm gonna actually have to go in about 10 minutes. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so for the opposition, please can we have Sharon Vogel. And for the fourth speaker, let's have Victoria White. So I will leave this screen up again, just so you can note these points here, which are helpful for your speech. And as you do that, I will attempt to place you into breakout rooms now. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that screen with you now. And again, I had a little trouble with Zoom. Obviously, you guys are probably going to spot a trend in these debating workshops that I'm not quite on it with Zoom. So I'm just going to assign you to your breakout rooms now. You will have 10 minutes, so see you soon. Okay, everyone, back to our intimate little group here. So we will go back to our quickfire round whilst we wait for everyone else to finish. So let's go back to our standoff quickfire round. I enjoy those rather much. Now, I'm going to raise a couple of the debates that came up earlier. Now, remember, the point of the standoff round is to provide a direct rebuttal to what the proposition speakers just said. Okay, so you will have 1 minute to speak. Now, let's go with this house believes that success is based on money. Please, can I have Garen argue for? Go. Garen,
Yeah, I was on mute, yeah. So this house believes that success is through money. Actually, money can bring a lot of benefits in our life. Firstly, it's not only about material wealth, but it also links to happiness, because when you have money, you get happiness through material wealth. Secondly, you can afford good luxuries. You can have a great health factor. For example, in countries like Mauritius, if you're poor, you cannot afford a clinic where you have high-paid doctors to look after you. But with money, you can get a good paid clinic and have high-paid doctors to look after you. Secondly, you can enjoy your life. You have more freedom. Freedom is a must nowadays, because the lower you are in the social hierarchy, it's more difficult for you.
Thank you, Karen. Your time is up.
Okay. So, yeah.
And can we have, rebutting that, Mukhtar Ali Malik, please? You're currently on mute, Mukhtar.
Yes,
there you go.
yes. It's all very well to say that money is a means of success, but it is not. Like our proposal of success, gentleman has said that you can afford these things and that things, but the things don't mean success. Achievement is in social strata, in education, in economic development, in it's your abilities, your intelligence. Money can help, but it's not really the only source of success. Similarly, you can buy facilities with money, but that doesn't really mean success. So success is through happiness, and though money can buy part of the things that you enjoy, but it doesn't lead you to greater heights intellectually or socially.
Thank you, Mukhtar. Okay, so let's go with this house would ban driverless cars. Please, can we have Yasin Ahmed take that one? Please argue for.
This House, Madam Speaker, would ban driverless cars because I think the technology is obviously very much in its infancy. If you look at the kind of evidence around the world, the leading kind of car manufacturer in terms of driverless cars, Tesla, has had a number of issues where driverless cars have actually caused horrific accidents and have malfunctioned. There is nothing to kind of replace the human brain in terms of its neurological and in terms of its sort of capacity to make quick decisions and make decisions that are there for the safety of the individual. No kind of technology can replace the brain in terms of its speed and its capacity. And you just have to look around the world in terms of the number of incidents that have occurred in terms of driverless cars and causing accidents.
Thank you. And rebutting that, please can we have Musa Nella?
Thank you. This house believes that a self-driving car should not be banned because people nowadays are more tired and they need a bit more help when they are traveling in long journeys. You have lorry drivers that experience accidents day to day because they fell asleep from driving for hours, and if the self-driving car would exist, they would be able to do their job more efficiently, but also have the opportunity to take rest. Also, you have lots of businessmen that have to hire people just to drive them from A to B, where if they could buy a self-driving car, they wouldn't need to have someone else to drive for them, because the car would do that for himself, would have saved so many, it would have cut so many corners that and would have saved so many jobs that are today not necessary.
Thank you, Musa. Your time is up. Okay. Right. So let's go with this house. I'm going to throw a new one in here. This house believes that meat is murder. So let's have Nicola Rubini argue for, please. Go.
This house believes that meat is murder, primarily for one main reason. Animals feel just like we do. At one time, perhaps in Victoriana, they believed that animals didn't have feelings, they didn't have, they distinguished humans from animals. It was the trend. But evidence shows that animals do live in families, they do live in packs, they grieve, and they live in communities just like we do. Consciousness and a soul and feelings we can relate to. We wouldn't murder another individual precisely because we identify with the fact that another human has those. There's no difference with an animal. The logical conclusion, therefore, is that to murder another being, despite the fact they are not human, that has those similar characteristics, amounts to murder.
Thank you. And please can we have Claudia Joliffe argue against? Claudia? Claudia?
I think, yeah, sorry, I'm trying to think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think meat isn't murder, sorry, because we need protein. It's an important source of protein. It's one that we get from certain animals.
If that's it?
Yeah, I don't have anything to say.
That's all right, no worries. Okay, we'll go on to the next, actually the last quickfire round, which is this house believes that watching television is harmful to our health. Please can we have Jordan Wilford argue for?
This house believes that television is harmful for our health based on the following reasons. Firstly, television has been shown to be highly addictive when watched in excessive amounts, and this leads to one being seated on their posterior for extended periods of time, which inhibits them from going outside to get much needed exercise and fresh air. all of which is integral to maintaining one's physical health. Secondly, exercise, watching TV affects our mental health, in that we are constantly exposed to fictitious realities which we strive to, which we think we want to achieve, but because we're watching that, we actually take away from the time that we could use to actually achieve the goals that we want to achieve in our life, thus having a negative effect on our mental well-being as well as our physical health.
Thank you, Jordan. And Garen, could you please rebut that? Oh, Garen, you're on mute. So
Firstly,
start again.
sorry. Firstly, television is something that brings a lot of relaxation in our lives. If you're someone that works probably 8 hours to 9 hours a day and you're tired, you need something to resort to relax yourself. You cannot only read, you cannot only exercise, you cannot only drink alcohol. You need to have some other forms of pleasure, you know, Netflix and chill, you know. You need to enjoy life sometimes in different ways. So I think watching TV is something good, but not in excess, but you do it partly and you enjoy it a couple of times, maybe 1-2 hours a week, and it's good. It's good for your health this way. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you very much, Garen. Yeah, I'm sure everyone here loves a good Netflix and chill, especially when you're studying the bar, that's for sure. Right, so thank you everyone for participating in that. I will now pull our speakers out of the breakout rooms.
Connie, I'm going to have to go out. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Yasin.
Bye-bye.
Right, so I'll just wait a moment for our speakers to come out their breakout rooms. Okay, I'm not actually seeing. Okay, I think they're coming back now. Hello, speakers. So your preparation time is up. And now we have the second debate of the evening, which is this House would reintroduce the right to bear arms. Now, the ownership of handguns is still upheld as a basic right in the United States of America, of the private individual. However, in the UK, private ownership of handguns was abolished in 1997, partly in response to the very tragic Dunblane massacre in 1996, when Thomas Hamilton, armed with handguns, massacred a roomful of infant school children and their teacher in a small school in Scotland. The question now is whether reintroducing handguns would be favourable or unfavourable to our society today. So please may we have the first speaker for the opposition, Wasim Khan, take the floor.
This House believes that the right to bear arms should be a fundamental right, as is the case in other countries, and therefore the main reason should be self-defence, namely against safeguards from state powers. State powers can sometimes be seen as encroaching and overreaching, therefore having the right to bear arms would be a safeguard in this instance. My main point is that the right to bear arms would be a protection from criminals, in particular those that live in the countryside, from wild animals. Due to the government cuts over the last decade, there have been limited resources put into law enforcement, and therefore it is noted by various statistics that police can take time to respond to matters which are brought to their attention. Therefore, having the right to bear arms would be a beneficial interest. How will it be introduced?
Point of information.
Yes.
You've talked about the impact of other states on safeguarding. if it's a statewide problem, don't you think that there should be a statewide solution rather than an individual solution?
So it would be it is a statewide solution, having the right to bear arms, because the state would be legislating to allow the public to be able to bear arms. Moving on, how will we safeguard and introduce the right to bear arms? Well, there would be a number of different recourses available. For example, a prerequisite would be a course on safety. People that wish to bear arms would have to take and sufficiently pass and meet a threshold. There will also be a license which would have to be maintained and would be renewed annually, and there will also be a charge for that license. And
point of information.
Yes.
Oh, Ben, apologies, you're not in the debate, so you cannot offer a point of information. Sorry, I've just paused your clock just so I can explain this. You can give a question after the debate. It's only speakers who are able to offer points of information. Okay? Okay. So you can continue, Wasim.
And the other safeguard that would be put in place by the government would be an age limit. There would be an age limit of 18 to 70 years old, which would initially be rolled out. Again, it would be optional for the public to bear arms. And again, these three safeguards would be put in place for the protection of those that do bear the arms and those that do not. Going back to my original point of self-defense, we strongly believe that self-defense should be part of the constitution of this country, as is in the other countries, and having these
point of information.
You cannot. This is protected time, Victoria.
And therefore, having these safeguards put in place would not only be beneficial to protect individuals against state powers.
Thank you, Wasim. Your time is up. So now can we have the first speaker for the opposition, Charan Bogle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This House is against the reintroduction of the right to bear arms in the UK. I'm just going to start off with dealing with my rebuttals. The first argument of self-defence is a very valid argument. In any sort of danger, you want to be able to protect yourself, but is a gun really the answer to someone stealing your handbag or stealing your phone in a nightclub? Is the response to shoot them? That would be highly disproportionate. And in terms of your second point on the three thresholds to meet, so annual license and an age limit and training, really touch upon the age limit of between 18 to 70. Are 18-year-olds responsible enough to hold a gun license? I mean, at that age, people are going to university, people are starting their new jobs, and it's fair to say to some extent that not all kids develop as quickly as other children. So in terms of reacting and having the option of reacting with violence by using a gun is a reason why I don't agree with your age limit point. Now, moving on to my points, I have two. The first point is that the UK does not have a gun culture. We can't just replicate the culture that is in the US, for example. Our culture relating to guns is only limited to hunting. That is it, nothing more. And given the demographic in the UK, we have large cities that are overpopulated and dense, and our landmass is massively is a lot smaller than the US. So the argument of protecting your land doesn't really work in our situation, because people are literally living on top of each other, and if the answer to protect your land is again to use a gun, it's highly disproportionate. And my second point relates to what is currently going on in the UK, which is a high knife crime rate. Now, knives are the easy choice because guns are a lot more difficult to obtain in the UK for obvious reasons. And it's inevitable that a high knife crime rate will then lead to a high gun crime rate, and having gun shops there only makes it that much more tempting for people to resolve disputes and resolve issues through guns, through violence.
Your time is up. Please can we have the second speaker for the proposition, Olivia Rawlings.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to rebut some of Jaren's points. So she mentioned that using a gun might not be a proportionate outcome to your handbag being stolen. But unfortunately, not all crime is like this, and crime can be much more violent. And so it might be the case that you are threatened with a gun, even though they are currently illegal. She also raised the question of whether 18-year-olds are responsible enough to be given a license to have a gun. We picked 18 because that's the age that you are permitted to do most things in this country that are deemed responsible of. That's the age that an adult is deemed responsible to do. And we actually think that for the upper limit, there should be potentially tests to assess whether somebody is capable of having a gun still, to determine their fitness. Now moving on to my points. The primary reason, as we've said, for the right to bear arms is to do with state powers. Now we're currently in a position of severe COVID restrictions, and the restriction on liberty at the moment in the country are some of the worst since wartime. And the right to bear arms is perhaps even more relevant now, because this is the right to bear arms protects citizens from a cruel and oppressive government, and where things like police have gone beyond their powers by prosecuting people for things that weren't even legislated at that time. For example,
Point of information.
Yes.
Do you think it's a good idea to put guns into the hands of angry citizens who don't trust their government?
Whilst, yes, this is essentially what would be happening, when a government is going so far as to publish guidance that goes beyond what is law and what has been carefully thought about and legislated, then perhaps that is something that the public should have the right to do. So as I was saying, the police have overstepped the mark on numerous occasions, most recently, for example, where 2 girls were fined for being on a walk, which was counted as exercise. And previously, in the first lockdown, some people were brought to court. For example, a woman at a train station making an essential journey was actually prosecuted and went the whole way through the prosecution, and she had to get a QC to appeal her sentence. It's also the case, our point
Thank you, Olivia, your time is up. So please can we have the final and fourth speaker, Victoria White.
Thank you. This House would not reintroduce the right to bear arms in the United Kingdom. I'd like to deal firstly with the points made by the Honourable Olivia Rawlings. We've had a number of quite bizarre statements here about how it's an individual's right to rise up against their government in using arms in order to defend their civil rights. This is clearly not the case. In a democratic society, you do not rise up against your government using arms. You use democratic modes of protest, and that definitely doesn't involve using guns. This is part of an overall point that I'd like to make. I'd like to suggest that this is the idea that we should bear arms is a misappropriation of the idea of liberty. I'd like to suggest that it's not a right that can actually be democratically protected. it's misleading to the highest degree to suggest that the right to bear arms is a part of a libertarian society. Actually, your right to swing your fist ends when it hits someone else in the face. And how far do you extend the right to bear arms? We've already seen Ms. Rawlings' arguments extending to the extreme suggestion that people should move up in civil uprising. But how far do you extend the right? Does the proposition think that it's acceptable for people to have nuclear bombs? So the liberty argument can really be used and can really be abused ad infinitum. It's an open door argument that allows anyone to do anything. We think that there should be more checks and more balances in place. There are dire consequences to situations like this.
Information.
Yes.
You mentioned that there should be more checks and balances. What other checks and balances do you suggest should be put in place?
Absolutely, it's very simple. Absolutely no guns in the UK. We've heard some quite unrealistic arguments, actually, from the proposition about safety and age limits being put in place. We live in the real world. We don't think that it's possible to educate every single person not to use a gun. There are some people who will use a gun, you know, in any situation it's inappropriate to use a gun. There are people who cannot actually be trained to use guns appropriately at all points. How do we actually educate people about this? I'd like to close finally with points about what's happened in the US recently. The recent uprising in the US has become increasingly dangerous, and I think there are warnings that it could become even more dangerous because of the right to bear arms. There have been pictures of people in full protective clothing, in full military gear, out to protest their civil rights. We do not want this import of US culture in the UK. We do not want.
Thank you, Victoria. Your time is up. Okay, so do we have any questions for the proposition who argued that they would reintroduce the right to bear arms? Just go ahead and ask. Harry, yes.
I have a question for the position that they suggest an age limit to own a gun of 18. What do they intend to do with those that presently own guns that are under the age of 18? And if they propose to take them off them, doesn't that itself, and they're giving guns to argue against the government that's imposing on them, doesn't that in itself almost incite an uprising from people who are having their guns taken away?
Sorry, is that question for the opposition or the proposition?
It's for the proposition.
Yeah.
So I can take that question. So I didn't quite catch it, but are you just...
I can repeat it if that helps. So essentially, what Harry asked was, what about those under the age of 18 who already have guns? And if they were to be taken off them, then doesn't that involve or incentivize violence against authority? I believe that was it, wasn't it, Harry? Something along those lines. So if you can take that, Wasim.
So the proposition is not aware of people being able to bear arms under the age of 18, and the note of an uprising and this revolt against a tyranny government is just ludicrous. The right to bear arms fundamentally would be, there would be checks and balances put in place. And again, there will be stringent requirements. For example, there will be a fee to pay for a license, which again would be out the realms of many 18-year-olds. Again, there would be a license that would have to be upheld each year, so that there would be training that would need to take place in order, for example, just like a theory test for a driving car, for driving a car, there's a fee to pay. So there would be a fee to pay and for training to be upheld. So there are a number of different checks put in place.
And Wasim, Harry also wanted to know what you would do about those who are under the age of 18 that currently have guns.
So there would be a voluntary scheme put in place for those individuals to hand in the guns, or again to declare them, so that they can be registered with the appropriate person, for example, the parent.
Okay.
I have a question for the proposition. Would you put limits on the types of guns available for different age ranges? So would you make a military grade gun available for an 18-year-old who at that same age is, as by your arguments, is legally allowed to start drinking? I mean, how would you tackle that issue?
Yes, there would be limits on the types of guns available, but we thought about that by both age and location. And so if you're in the country,
you just broke up for about 10 seconds. So could you just repeat that, please?
Oh, sorry. I think we initially defined this as whether to reintroduce handguns. So they were the only type of gun at present.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions for the opposition?
Yeah, I do have one. Yep. What would you say about the people that are vulnerable, the ones that are left aside in society and have potential risks for dangers? They're not kind of democratically protected in a certain way.
I think it's not an ideal situation when people aren't democratically protected. We need to improve the level of democratic protection, as you call it, for those people. Guns are not the solution.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to add to that, Sharon.
Yeah, I think if you want.
No, just carry on. Carry on.
No, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. You say,
that's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to completely agree with Victoria. I mean, if you are a vulnerable person, then that just shows the lack of protection there is for vulnerable people, and that's an issue that goes to government and regulations, and it's more of an issue of improving our standard of living in our government enough so people aren't left to the side and vulnerable people don't need to resort to using guns to protect themselves when they just shouldn't be. They should be protected by their own government.
Yeah, but about the police that use guns unreasonably, what do you think about that?
Again, I think that's another regulation issue with being a lot more strict with how and when police can use guns and enforcing harsher punishments on those who completely just abuse their powers for absolutely no reason. So again, I think that's just more of a governmental issue that can be resolved that way and not through guns.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes, we'll leave this as the last question, everyone.
Okay, so the opposition mentioned about the need for proportionality and guns being a disproportionate measure for self-defense. It's assumed that people are still able to get their hands onto guns, albeit illegally, and use those for criminal purposes. If the law in the UK currently is that self-defense has to be proportionate, and we know that the carrying of knives, for example, is also illegal, how then do we assist those in the position who are at the threat of criminal behavior from guns to then provide a proportionate self-defense for themselves?
I don't think that law about self-defense means that you have to provide people with the tools for their self-defense. I don't think that law is dependent upon providing that provision. So yeah, that's what I would say about that. And obviously there's the other overall point that we need to work on improving the overall safety through democratic means of our citizens. And we need to crack down on people who have guns. Your point about knife crime is very relevant.
frozen.
Okay.
Sorry, that my silence was an acceptance of the answer.
Yeah, I think everyone's screen froze there for a moment. I thought it was just me. So whatever was said in the past 20 seconds, repeat.
I know, we were just waiting for you because I think you froze.
Oh, it was me that froze. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay, so firstly, before I announce the winner, well done, everyone. That was a really strong debate. Great debaters as well. That was great. Gosh, I've said great so many times. That was how great you were. So now what we will do is have a show of hands. Who would reintroduce the right to bear arms in the UK? If you agree, please raise your hand. And if you disagree, which is probably everyone, yeah, okay, most of us. So that was quite a difficult debate. And please can I have a show of hands who believe that the proposition gave the most compelling argument? So park your beliefs aside. Who believed that the proposition gave the best argument? And the opposition? Okay, thank you very much. So I believe that the side that gave the most compelling argument was the opposition. Now, firstly, you all presented very good arguments. You know, the proposition, you did defend your arguments very well. I did like basically the safeguard tools you would have put in place for those who would potentially be bearing arms. I thought that they were well thought out, so well done. Except the age limit was a bit of a problem. And I did also, especially with the 18-year-olds, and I did also find that in general, the rebuttals were stronger and more effective on the opposition side. So as I look down at my notes here, bearing arms, for example, isn't a democratic solution, not in a democratic society. And you did accept that there are people, vulnerable people, in very difficult situations who might resort to crime or who might resort to bearing an arm in self-defense. However, you said, you know, that is a problem that needs to be addressed, but not with guns. And you kept going back to that point, which I thought was really effective. And it just hammered the argument home that you acknowledge that there are issues in society, they do need to be fixed, but not with guns. And I thought that the way you attacked the threshold limit was very good, especially with the age requirement, as I've already stated. And you know, also the fact that the UK doesn't have a gun culture like the US, so we're not in the same boat essentially, and I thought that was very persuasive. So with that being said, that brings us to the end of our debating workshop, and I hope that you all enjoyed it very much. Thank you everyone for attending today. The next session will be in March, and another email will be circulated closer to the time. So you'll be able to register your interest and you'll be added to our mailing list. Now, again, anyone interested in the Monroe Cup, please email me to register your interest. And my email is, I'll read it out slowly, debating@middletemplestudents.com. Okay, that's debating@middletemplestudents.com. So
Sorry,
with that, hello?
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What is this cup?
Oh, okay, so the Monroe Cup is the debating tournament that's taking place in June this year. And essentially it's a day of parliamentary style debating, and the winners will receive, well, there'll be two winners, and each will receive a £200 gift voucher from the legal tailor Shepherd and Woodward. So that's the prizes that are involved, and I've placed it in June so that it's after everyone's exams, so that at least you don't have to stress and worry about a debating tournament whilst you're studying. So yes, that brings us to the end of today's debating workshop. Thank you again, everyone, for turning up, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
So Connie.
Thank you.
Yes, Jordan.
So I've just messaged you there. Are we responsible for finding our own teammates for the Monroe Cup?
Well, I will basically send a list out close to the time of everyone who has signed up for the cup, and then I'll leave it to you guys to reach out to each other and sort your teams out. Okay. All right. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Connie, can I ask a question, please?
You may. Yes.
When you say we could reach out to each other, that's great, but I don't believe we have each other's contacts details, like emails and things. So if somebody wanted to contact me or I wanted to email them.
Okay. Does everyone have access to the Middle Temple students WhatsApp group?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Victoria, did you want to maybe say a word about this, because I know you have contact. Victoria's
I think what we can do is we can go back over all of the emails for everybody that's signed up, because we have all the contact details for everybody who's attended the last 2 workshops.
Yeah.
And then potentially set out a main Google form or something that everybody can then link to.
And you'll email that to us. You could email that to us.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. So we'll kind of like set it out. Like there may be some other tech that we can look into, but we'll find a way, as long as everybody's okay. So if probably send an email and just let everybody know if they're not happy having their, details shared or whatever beforehand, then let us know. And then if not, we'll set up something centralized where you can log in and you can put your name down and maybe your contact telephone number, and then we can work it out like that, I think.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it, really.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Very much.
Cheers. Bye.